Can you hear me? My name is Matt Allen. I live here in Huntsville. I don't need the mic. If everyone can hear me, that's fine. On the program, you'll see I'm listed as a musician. I've been doing that for a long, long time on a part-time basis and much more on a full-time basis now, up until this past May when I entered treatment at Princess Margaret Hospital in Toronto for squamous cell cancer of the tongue and lymph nodes. I can still talk, I can still sing. I've returned to my part-time work for the town of Huntsville. I work part-time at the library. That's where I know Jackie from Enliven, and she very kindly invited me to be part of the panel. I also work at a Muskoka Heritage Place, and for those of you who aren't as familiar with, because in some ways it's Huntsville's best kept secret, it's the Pioneer Village on Brunel Road. And I love working there, I love working at the library, but I also do work as a musician, both in the immediate region and in Toronto, with bands and on my own. So, as I was saying, I found out through a routine physical checkup with my GP that I had a lump on the side of my throat. I had no symptoms prior to that. I had no pain, no discomfort, and I wasn't even aware that there was a bump under the skin over here. The doctor found it. So I would encourage anyone who thinks there might be something wrong not to ignore it. Get it looked at, and I got through, well, I'm still getting through dealing with the cancer. Initially, I was very frightened for myself, but also for my family. I have a wife and son, and I did not want to put them through an unknown for me and for them. I got through the treatment at the hospital by trying to focus on the science that was being applied to my case and to try and find as much humor in the situation as I possibly could. And I can give you a short example of that. The first day I walked into Princess Margaret, I took the bus down from Huntsville to go for my first day of treatment. First thing in the morning. So of course here you have to get the bus at 10 to 4 in the morning at the Maple Leaf Motel or whatever the heck it's called down near Highway 11 and Aspden Road. They told me the day before that the front door would be unlocked and I could wait inside. They lied. The bus was late. So I'm cursing and swearing to nobody in particular. I think an owl flew by. I could hear an owl hooting kind of behind at the Algonquin Cafe barbecue place. I go up the steps when I get to Toronto at 7:30 in the morning, and of course I haven't slept on the bus at all. My brother phones me from Vancouver. He's having a hip replacement. And I'm thinking, this isn't a great time to phone, but good luck, Pete, you'll do well. And he says the same to me. First person I see from the hospital staff is this statuesque blonde woman with a beautiful print frock. And for a hospital, shoes that were too tall, which she stumbled on. And I got a chuckle out of that because she reminded me of the head doctor from the HBO series, Nurse Jackie. So I tried to get through the treatment like that. I have had some lingering side effects, but I'm back at work and I never looked sick. And I know that I am so much better off than so many people that I saw at the hospital on a daily basis. I was home on the weekend. I'd like to recognize the support that I received from the Wheels of Hope program that the Cancer Society organizes. And I'm really flattered to have been asked to help with this. So if anybody has a question for me or the other panelists, I'm really pleased to, you know, give whatever I can to help anybody else out. And I'll stop talking. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lee Bernstein. I don't know if this is working. Yeah? Okay. I was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 69. I'm now 72. So I'm 3 years out. I'm not quite at my 5-year mark. But I have to recommend yearly mammograms. And that's what my GP was amazing. She saw a little tiny dot. And she said, I want to send you back for an ultrasound. And I did that, and she said, now I want to send you back for a biopsy. And I went back for a biopsy, and then I saw the surgeon at Princess Margaret, Dr. McCready, and my GP called to give me the news, and she said, don't Google. And I thought that was the best advice she could give me. She said, don't Google, call me. And I was very grateful for that advice, because I think we all go to the Google machine to think we're going to find an answer. And I don't think that's a good place to go. So the surgeon, I said, take them off. I was done. I had a girlfriend who also recently had a double mastectomy, and it's this fear, that it's going to come back, take them off. He said, it's so small, let's baby steps. So we did the surgery, and of course he found, from the samples of lymph nodes that he took out, he found cancer in the lymph nodes, so that led to chemotherapy. And again, as you mentioned, the people at PMH are amazing. They're wonderful, wonderful people. So my older daughter sat with me, drove me down to Princess Margaret, sat with me for hours and hours and hours, made me lunch. And one thing that helped me with the nausea, because my daughter's a naturopath, was raw ginger, which I know it's just munch on it, don't eat it. And she made ginger water, and that really helped. I had no nausea. I feel really fortunate that I got through my chemo. I was very positive about the whole situation. I just had a feeling that I was going to get through this. In my mind, I just knocked off, this is going to take a year. So I wasn't anxious to get things done. I wasn't anxious to get things over with. I knew it was going to be this process, and it was, in my mind, a year seemed reasonable. So 4 treatments of chemotherapy, and then 25 treatments of radiation. And they tattoo you on the radiation, all these things I didn't even know were going to happen to me. I just blindly went along with it because I completely trusted the system, and the system was going to work. So that was my journey. I'm 3 years out. I'm on letrozole, which is probably for me worse than the chemo because the side effects are hard. It's hot flashes, which I thought it was over. So that's really not fair. Joint pain, and I do a lot of walking, so that's tricky. And weight gain, that's fun. And my surgeon said to me, the drugs they gave me for the chemo, he said, I have bad news. The drug I'm going to give you for your chemo won't make you lose weight. I thought I was going to get skinny, and this was going to work. Okay, I can deal with the chemo because I'm going to get skinny. It didn't work. What are you going to do? So in terms of isolation, I didn't really feel isolated. I was had a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends in California because I spent half my year there, and they would email me. They knew exactly what days I was having chemo. They would send me emails. I had friends who would pick me up and drive me to lunch. Of course, people bringing over dinners all pre-packaged and lunches all pre-packaged. And Netflix saved me. Netflix, get it? I just feel that it was a journey for me, and I never felt upset about it. It was just something that happened. It had to be dealt with. I had to get through it. I had my year mark, and it was great. And when it was all over, last year, I threw a big party for 30 of my friends, my girlfriends, who saw me through this, and to thank them. And that was a really wonderful mark for me. I have 2 more years on the drug. Very grateful that my doctor was very picky. It was like smaller than my tiny nail here, and she caught it, and so I'm very grateful to her. And that's my story. If you have any questions.
What a privilege to be in the middle of all these stories, all of this life bubbling up in the middle of such a crappy thing. Thank you for all of that. My name is Doug Norris. Like David, I'm a recently retired United Church minister. And I remember the day you were elected moderator. I remember thinking, I could have done that. Clever enough guy, and like you, I had a lot of hair back then. And so, but then I got to watch David lead a very difficult church through a really difficult time and from such vulnerability, but the strength that your leadership out of that vulnerability brought was such a gift to us. So thank you for that. I'm here tonight because I'm the executive director of the Abbey Retreat Center. If you don't know about it, I've got a little table here with some caps that are not free, with some literature that is free. And basically, we're a residential retreat facility just about 45 minutes south of here, just outside the town of Haliburton. And the only thing for which we exist is to offer to those persons with a cancer diagnosis and their caregivers a 4-day time apart in a retreat setting, which is not only lovely and restful, and we bring in a chef and there's lovely food, but we do a deep dive into what the journey of cancer can be, with the goal of equipping people to live as well, to thrive as deeply as possible despite this crappy journey. So the most intense set of relationships get built in 3 or 4 days. And some skills learned. We have expressive art therapists, massage therapists, yoga teachers and therapists, musicians. I mean, we do a drumming circle that is just absolutely wild. The group is up drumming and dancing, and you can't tell at a glance who is the perfectly healthy caregiver and who is the person who in a month or 2 might not be there. Just a remarkable experience of a community building around this shared journey. So if I can offer any insights into that program, into the merits of that kind of work on the cancer journey, I'll be delighted to. And if I can answer any questions for any of you around our specific work, or if you just happen to be going by Abbey Gardens, great food hub, craft brewery right beside my office, and our facilities right there. And I'll be delighted to show you around. Thank you for the invitation.
Kind of nervous now being between these pastors. I'll try to behave.
We don't.
Okay.
We're trained to make people nervous.
Okay, good. You're very well trained then. My name is Kirsty Coop. I'm a business owner here in Huntsville. I'm also a wellness advocate for a company called doTERRA Essential Oils. But Jackie invited me here tonight because I'm a mom, and we have a daughter who had cancer, and we went through that journey with her, and she's doing well now. She's off at university. So maybe if anybody has questions on how to help navigate teenagers through the world of cancer, I can maybe offer a little advice, a little insight on that. Teenagers are hard enough, but then helping them make some tougher decisions and then knowing how to advocate for one. I'm here, so that's all.
I look forward to hearing the other stories.
Hi everyone, my name is Lindsay McMillan. I'm a family doctor here in Huntsville. I'm originally from the East Coast. I'm a Cape Bretoner, but fell in love with that film guy right up there, and here I am. So my experience with cancer has been through patients of mine, from prevention, the prevention aspect, to the diagnosis, to the support as they enter treatment, and then coming full circle post-treatment and even end-of-life care. So I followed people through many cycles of life and lots of people who have been on the journey with cancer. So I'm so grateful to be with such an incredible panel and people who are brave, standing up here and telling their story. My role, I feel, as a family physician, in addition to the diagnosis, I take it very seriously, that support role. I've been a part of Enliven since its inception. I'm the vice chair of the board and have been since we started. And I'm so proud of how the mind, the body, and the spirit of people living with cancer, their families, and people who are working with those on that journey. So I'm so happy to be here, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pam McDermott. I'm originally trained as a family physician, but all my work in Muskoka for the last 35 years has been in psychiatry and mental health. In the last number of years, I've been part of the palliative care team here through the family health team, doing the psychosocial support for patients and families and staff. I have an interest in how to prevent burnout for both professional and family caregivers. How do you instill hope at every step of the way, even in the last day of life? And very interested in narrative, what we would call narrative medicine, which is basically the stories that people have, the context within which people are going through their illness or the caregivers. So I'd be interested in speaking to caregivers or anybody about how to prevent burnout and to stay well oneself in such a difficult process. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Lee Fettis, and I'm a teacher here in Huntsville, and I'm so grateful that I have a lot of colleagues and friends here providing support tonight, because they know that this isn't what I feel comfortable normally doing, so thank you all. After university and after high school, I had some lumps and bumps that were taken out, and at the time it was thought to be nothing. And then fast forward about 25 years, I found a bump in one of the sites again. And my parents, who were both physicians, said, oh, you should get that looked at right away. So I, of course, forgot and went quite a little while later and found out that I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. So there's 4 types of classical Hodgkin's, and I had the very rare atypical, which is so interesting because in a place like the UK, 200 people would be diagnosed within a year, of which 75% would be male. And I thought, that's the lottery I won? I was so lucky to receive support from Joe before Enliven was born. So I did restorative yoga here, and it was honestly one of the best things that I did. So to see that it's moved forward and her dream is being grown and continued has been amazing, because that was one of the best things that I fell upon. I worked in healthcare before I was a teacher, and so it's been very hard during my treatment at times with some of the drugs, because I had seen some of the worst case scenarios at Mount Sinai's ICU. So I had to sort of put that aside and just have faith that things would be okay, and so far they have been. And I'm so grateful to be here tonight with all of you.
Thank you all, the panel, for your courage to be here. The fact that you're willing to stand with us and create a supportive community is huge. So thank you all. We're going to open up the questions to the audience, but I first wanted to ask a question. The way it can work is you can just come up and ask, or you can slip us a piece of paper if you want to. Any of you can answer any of the questions, whatever you're comfortable with, but I wanted to first ask you, and it doesn't have to be everyone that answers, but what puts you at ease when we're in this conversation that is so difficult to have? What is one thing that you would say helps put you at ease?
For me, it would be hope. Because going through Princess Margaret and seeing all the other patients and what they're going through, and sitting in the chemo lab and watching young patients and old patients, and I just think it's such a wonderful facility, and they offer so much support, and I think that always gave me hope. I didn't use any of their support systems because I didn't feel that I needed it. I felt I was okay with what I was going through, but for me it would be hope.
I think the ability to be able to speak honestly and to have frank conversations. You know, I think sometimes you can read in a person's face that what you were saying can make them uncomfortable, and so I think just being able to speak honestly about the great stuff and the not so great stuff. Oh, I can say it louder. So just the ability to.
So he was just saying the ability to be honest.
Yeah.
So Joe and I often talked about how the whole creation of Enliven is creating this really stinky skunk in a room that nobody wants to talk about, right? So come out to our panel because we're going to talk about the experiences with cancer on a Saturday night. It's going to be really great. So I think it's having the permission to have those conversations, right, that are raw and hard. So I can pass this microphone around to Christy. Christy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think I just want to say, am I loud enough without one? Okay. So having these conversations and people coming up to you and people always wanting to know, and it's I think it's on. Just pretend.
I'll give you a hairbrush.
Okay, yeah. But knowing that you have to get into a difficult conversation and you're going somewhere to have a difficult conversation, I do want to say having a great partner is important. And whether that's your spouse, my husband's there, or a good friend, or somebody just knowing that someone's got your back. And that if you do say the wrong thing, maybe at the wrong time, someone has still got your back in your own way.
Yeah, I have one thing to add to that. For people who may be going through this and people who have gone through this, I found in my case, I have a close friend who went through the same sort of treatment for the same form of cancer. And I also found that when I was away from home on weekdays, staying at the Princess Margaret Lodge in Toronto, it was very comfortable. I mean, after maybe a week of settling in to kind of air concerns, complaints, funny stories with the kind of instant peer group that you established with the other patients. The staff at the lodge were great. They were used to having people around who were in treatment and who were technically ill. But I think if finding somebody in a similar situation who can relate and talk comfortably, because you're always going to find some people who, like, you may have known them for years and they find out, you know, you have cancer, right? And they're weird about it. And inside you feel the same. You might be in pain or feel nauseous or whatever, but in your perception of the world, you feel the same as you always did, or more or less. So I think it's important that finding support, I think, is easier with people who've gone through the same thing. Right.
So anyone from our audience have any questions that would like to pose to the panel? Don't be shy. It's a great time to get dance.
So there was mention that you didn't feel isolated during your treatments, but I would suspect that some people would
Yes.
feel very isolated, and just for people who maybe caregivers or who are not really in the journey, just to have an understanding of what that is, so that we can be, forthcoming and be there when people are wanting an honest conversation. So what would that look like, and what would support be like for you on that journey?
Yeah. So not from a caregiver approach or people who are wanting to be supportive. Something that I found helpful in my professional work as well as working with patients is to have a framework within which to think about what you are going to be doing. So one way of thinking about it is that there's a difference between fixing, helping, and what we could call cultivating a compassionate action with that person. So metaphorically, I think about it, if I was going to be in the supportive role, even as a caregiver, is that compassion, which literally means suffering with, is that I'll say that the patient, the cancer person in this case, is over here, and I'm standing here shoulder to shoulder with them. Sometimes I'm going to move out of that position and do some kind of fixing thing, like maybe something actually needs to be fixed. Being empathic, that's what we want to do, is get in there and fix things, which is often totally appropriate. Or I might want to help with a meal or childcare or driving. But when we've kind of done that fixing and helping role there, is to move back into that shoulder-to-shoulder position and cultivate a compassionate approach to that person, which often means just standing by or showing up and maybe just even bearing witness to maybe not anything that we particularly do. And that's helpful to the person, because we don't really know what's best for them. We have to do some deep listening to find out what it is that they want from us, and maybe at first they don't even know what it is that they need from us, but that we listen deeply to that and be ready to step forward into whatever role is necessary. And then it's beneficial to us as well, as the caregiver, because that keeps us away from what Joan Halifax refers to as pathologic altruism, where you're doing way too much at your own expense, or empathic distress, where you overly identify with the person that's ill. So that would just be some advice I would have when you're looking at what it is that will serve in this situation. And I'd be interested in the people who have been the patients as to what are the kinds of things that they would like to see from other people who are wanting to come forward and help.
A couple things I would add. First of all, I was guilty of isolating myself. There is a tendency among those of us who are in treatment to not want to impose, and I've heard from my children who are now adults that they would have liked to have been there more. But I said, stay at school, it's okay, do what you need to do. And so we need to be careful about isolating ourselves. The things that I found most helpful, helpful and unhelpful, one is that people who could be quiet with me. There's a lot of energy comes into the room sometimes. I'm going to take care of you. I just want you to lie down and have a nap with me. That's all I want. I don't need a lot of help. I didn't find it helpful when people brought me solutions. I got calls from strangers telling me I needed to go to Mexico and do something. That's not helpful. And part of the busyness around is for the people who are attending me, for them to deal with their anxiety, because a lot of times there's that feeling like you end up feeling like you need to take care of the person who's worried about you. And so I like someone to be there who can be grounded and quiet, and that's just me as a person. I mean, other people want something else.
Yeah, I just don't want you to get the impression that I just sailed through cancer. It was hard. I couldn't walk up the stairs without stopping halfway up after chemo. I couldn't get off the couch to get a glass of water. But one thing that really stuck with me, I took an information course after I got my diagnosis. And the one phrase that this person said in the whole hour that stuck with me was, ask for help. And I think a lot of us don't do that. We think, oh, I can barrel through this, I can do this on my own, but you have to ask for help. And I think that's a really important thing, and I did ask for help. And that's why I really didn't feel isolated, because when I needed help, I needed a meal prepared. I mean, my husband works a lot, and he was always there for me, but of course he's at work. And if I needed to go to the market, then I'd call a friend and say, can you take me to the market? Can you help me get my groceries in the house? So I didn't just sail through la-di-da. It was asking for help, and that's really important to do. And that's something that I'm not used to doing. I do everything on my own. I paint the house, I garden, but to stop and say, I can't do this anymore, I need some help.
Any questions from the audience?
I'm wondering about your families. I'm wondering about how do people, friends of like your daughter, how does somebody help your daughter? Say I'm her friend, and how do I deal with her? Obviously she's dealing with you, and I'm allowing that. But how do you deal with your friend going through one of their family members struggling with things?
Did you want to know how my daughters dealt with it and my husband dealt with it?
Well, how do you help your daughter deal? Like, how does her friends help?
Well, her
Like,
friends.
how do I help my friend deal with her mother going through cancer?
I think you really just need to let her know that you're there for her. And again, I think it's a really hard thing for people to ask for help. And if you can encourage them, I'm here for you, please ask. And if they don't ask, like in the beginning I didn't ask. My friends just did it. They just brought me food. I didn't ask. And when I ran out of food, I had to ask. I think asking, what can I help you with? How can I help you? One daughter was in Oakland, California. She wanted to quit a job and come home. I said, please don't do that, right? Don't stay there. Finish your contract. My older daughter was present. She sat with me through the chemo. But I think my kids know that I was really strong and I was just going to get through this. But I know they all had their friends help them and discuss it. They didn't discuss it with me, but they discussed it with their friends. And they were afraid that I was going to do something natural, because I'm a very natural person. And they were afraid I was going to do some airy-fairy natural thing. And they just said, please, just do the chemo. And I said, I'm going to do what has been proven to work. So don't worry, I'll go back and do my natural things when I'm well. But again, I think you need to really sit down and say, how can I help you? And if they don't have an answer, maybe you can get some idea of what they need and just do it. because it's really hard for us to ask people.
I'm not in that position. I just was curious about like caretakers taking care of the ill. Like they obviously, sometimes it's more effective. They're more effective than the actual person who's ill.
Yes, 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 they're strong. Well, yeah, they know what to do. They need to speak.
Yeah.
Christy, would you be willing to speak to that at all? Or?
I'm not named first.
Yeah. So let me just make sure I've got this right. So our daughter had cancer, and then a lot of people always asked about Abby. How's Abby? How's she doing? And we found it very helpful. So when people wanted to know how to help us, sometimes we just had to ask as well. Sometimes people didn't ask. And you know what? And that's okay. They didn't know how to ask. They don't know how to ask, how can I help you help your daughter? Really, they want to know, how can we help? What can we do for your daughter? What can we do for this situation? I think it's important to remember that there are the people with the cancer and there are the caregivers, but everyone's tied together, right? And there's the family members, and it's not individuals. Like it's a family. It's a real community that is being affected. And if people aren't sure who to ask or where to ask, like we should just encourage them to ask somebody. Ask somebody. Talk to anybody in that community, and that community will pass it around and help out. Does that make sense?
We just have Heather as a question.
Thanks, Christy.
Hello. I think that I'm not really different than a lot of people here when looking at cancer and having conversations with family members and friends who have struggled with cancer. You know, the idea of whether to pursue the typical medical process through cancer, the chemo, radiation, versus natural and alternative modalities or remedies or whatnot. And you know, I think that to me is kind of the biggest struggle that I've heard of with people, whether they're family members or friends or those struggling with cancer themselves. You know, and there's probably no answer to kind of figuring out, well, what would, you know, how to make that decision on your own. You know, what thing will actually work for you. And I hear, I think it's Lee, you know, that Lee, you did not go the natural route. You know, I just wonder, do those of you, or did those of you who had cancer or have cancer consider natural alternatives in conjunction with medical, kind of typical medical ways, or you know, how did you combine the two, and what benefit did you see from, you know, the alternative versus medical route, and are there any resources out there that help people kind of navigate that? Because realistically, you know, those struggling with cancer go first to their family physician. And I know that a lot of family physicians, you know, do support other means, but how difficult is that in your line of work to, you know, to speak into the natural versus medical? Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep.
Sit and talk.
I can't see you.
That's a great question, Heather. So my role personally as a person's family doctor is to my practice, so diagnose, treat accordingly, that sort of thing. Our family practice is usually guided by evidence-based medicine, so good literature. I feel it's so important, all that said, is to meet the patient where they are and to answer questions that I can, and if I don't have answers to the question, to be able to give her resources. So in terms of patient education and information, my advice is get as much information as you can. Be your own advocate. Go to a naturopath, go to your family doctor. I will give you my professional recommendation based on the information that I have, but I will also support the patient and meet them where they are and help guide them to make the best decision for them, which is sometimes not chemotherapy. That said, I feel like in my professional capacity to be able to support them with whatever decision they make, I found that naturopathic medicine, that wellness, that can actually support the system through conventional treatments like chemotherapy. I've seen it with my own eyes time and time again, and there's more and more evidence coming out to support that as well. So
Yes.
I meet the patient where they are, and we work together from there.
Thank you. At the risk of sounding like I know something and I don't really about the medical profession, I do understand that North America is somewhat uniquely positioned as an adversarial relationship between what we might call the conventional medical and the alternative. That's breaking down. It doesn't exist in other places. Europe is in a completely different place in terms of the coexistence of these possibly adversarial schools. There is, at the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine, the Patterson Institute for Integrative Cancer Care, which is dealing with precisely this question. How can what would be called alternative or natural modalities actually contribute to outcomes in the conventional care? And so there's a lot of ground yet to cover. We are accustomed to seeing them as adversarial, and that's not the only possibility that's out there.
So we're coming toward.
Sorry, can I just add something? Because Ali, I think you might be familiar with this as well, but there, in the States right now, there is, and I'm just speaking, I'm not plugging, I'm sorry, but because I work with doTERRA essential oils, and I know Ali used them as well, this company is breaking down those barriers, and they have opened clinics in the States now. Not only are they affordable for people, but they are holistic healthcare clinics. So they've got medical doctors, plus naturopaths, chiropractor, acupuncture, the whole realm under one roof now. And it's just that whole healthcare is joining forces, medical, natural, everything. And it's so encouraging to see that all these different areas of healthcare are coming under one roof. And there are clinics going to be opened in Canada in the next couple of years to do that. And it's just so encouraging to see that. So.
We have our allies at the Ottawa Integrative Cancer Center, Douglas Seeley, and they're doing brilliant work where they're looking at how naturopathic medicine can be an adjunct, as Lindsay said, to the Western medical model. It's lovely to see them working together, and they've done such groundbreaking work that those naturopaths are able to be in the hospital looking at the charts, which is massive. So it's very exciting what's happening in Ottawa. We're coming toward the end of our evening. So I would love to know if there are burning questions out there before we wrap up. I think Kim's pointing at you. Okay.
Hi, I'm Kim, and I have a small role in the helping world in this community, and this is not a question, it's more of an observation. So I'm just wondering if any of you can share some of your thoughts on those left behind. So I work with folks, parents of children who are no longer here, adult children who have had conflicted relationships with parents that have passed away. So I just wanted to really bring attention to that group because I don't hear a lot around supporting those folks, and there are many of us out there, and just wondering if you have anything to sort of offer in that regard.
There are some groups that do operate in Huntsville for bereavement, for people who've lost somebody. Because it's a small community, they're not specialized group, people who've lost a child or people who've lost a spouse, or they're joined groups. So through hospice, they run groups, they run 2 a year. And there are groups that run through Faith Baptist too, I believe. There's other groups in town that are formalized groups. I think the other thing is that there's resources through the palliative care team, through the family health team. So there are formal therapeutic resources available. I think informally, it's important for people to again, seek out help from their supportive community, whoever that is, whether it's their church group or their neighbors or their friends or whoever can be supportive. Because people go on with their lives. So somebody dies and it's like, okay, well, that's done now, and everybody else goes back to their own life, and the people that are left behind are left struggling often by themselves, with the expectation that, okay, we got to get on with it and get over it and closure and these kinds of things, which is mythic, really, that does not happen. People, probably suffer maybe for the rest of their lives. They're changed forever when they've had a major loss in their life. And so I would totally agree with you. It's really important for people to find some kind of support for themselves, whether it's something formal or informal, and to not stop talking about it, not to say, well, okay, well, it's been a year now, you should be over this, because you're not going to be over it. It's going to get better, but you're not going to be over it. And if there's a more what we would call pathologic bereavement process happening, where people are really struggling and they see no joy in life and no hope, then those people need to get some professional help for sure. But I think it's totally germane that you bring that up, because it is a group that often is not included in our help and support.
I remember hearing once about the difference between getting closure and integration. Yeah. Right, the idea that there's never closure, it's never over, but you integrate yourself into a new person, different person, transformed. I'm not on the panel.
And I would also add, just from the experiences that we've had at our own center, which is just we teach art and we teach other holistic modalities. We find that a lot of people who are left behind and who are suffering loss come to our center to pick up a passion that they've left behind because life got in the way. And so they now come seeking a group of like-minded people to pick up a passion, whether it be art or just music, and they don't know how, so they come and drum. But they're coming into a support group of like-minded people who have the same interests. And there's a whole social network that begins to form there. And they form friends that fill a big void in their life. So there's also that aspect, and I think possibly people should be encouraged to seek out something and to pursue something that they would like to learn.
Something new.
Something new. Yeah.
Wonderful. So just as we close out the evening, I just wanted to give this to Mita. This is a little gift for you. Thank you so much for your... to a close Enliven's third annual keynote and panel discussion. Just want to say a big thank you again to our panelists for joining us here this evening. And David, thank you so much for making the trek all the way from Marathon. Thank you for being here. I would like to just invite Jackie Riley up to the front of the room here, just to close out the evening. Jackie has been furiously putting this event together the last several months. She's the glue that's been holding us all together. So Jackie, the floor is yours.
you very much. I have a bunch of thank yous that I want to put forward, but I'm going to be a little bit selfish because I've got you all here and mix my two hats. So I'm just curious if there's a burning answer from anyone on the panel, and maybe Lee, Kirsty, I would love to hear from you. My worlds collide when I ask this question. I'm wondering about your experience, positive experiences that you had in your workplaces when you were at work and having to take time off or explore that with other people who were maybe giving care and needed to take time. What were some of the positive things that your workplaces were able to do for you? Do you have comments on that?
It was kind of neat to see people from my past life resurface, and so people reaching out that I'd worked with many years ago, for example, in Toronto 10, 15 years ago, get together and provide gift certificates. They'd researched and found the places that I like to go here. So meals out and completely unexpected. Like the first time I went there, I found that there was a massive gift card waiting for me, and it was signed all the people I'd worked with. So stuff like that. It also at the time showed how much I loved my job and how much I missed the people I worked with. And so I wanted to delay starting treatment because I didn't want to leave my kids. And then I just couldn't wait to get back to work. And so as much as it's very tough to get back to it, sometimes it was just so important to be with the people, like your family, your daytime family. And so an ear, a smile, a hug, a note, drives places, everything, just the support of being there, and then asking again and again. So, checking in once and not thinking, oh, I've asked, now it's done. Just continually checking in.
Thank you. Kirsty, and if you want to comment maybe just on the school context, and then I've got lots of prizes.
Yeah, just as we brought Abby through this her story, the school was amazing up here. They met with us privately first to see how Abby wanted to be treated or what Abby needed, and then what time off she would need and how they could, cater instead of just saying, okay, this kid's got cancer, this is what we do. We make an assembly, we have a party, we, do all this. Well, Abby's such an introvert that would have just, she would have just curled out. It was awful. So they kept it very private for her. They told her teachers who had her, that's all. She told her close friends. And so she was able to take time off school. People just said she had gone off. I think one teacher said she was on a holiday. She'll be back. She's taking time off. No one really let on what was going on. And when she came back to school, she was able to slide back into her normal role and just know that she had that support from the teachers and she didn't miss a beat. So she felt good about that.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that was kind of nice was that I didn't have to explain my story all the time. I had been team. I think I wasn't there, but I think that they had a meeting on my behalf. And so the information was sort of passed out, and that was great because I think that first conversation would have been really tough because I did go back to work for a couple of weeks before leaving. And so that first time telling somebody probably would have pushed me completely over the edge, but that had been done for me, and I was very grateful for that.
Thank you both. Just before we close out, does anyone else have a question or comment or something that they were hoping from this evening that hasn't had a light shone on it yet?
Are you doing this again next year, Jack?
If you'll be here, Heather, we'll do it again next year. Then I just want to thank everyone that's been part of the panel, and Allie has some lovely little things to start to distribute. So, yeah, it just means so much to me that people that I know and people that I don't know are willing to share their story and talk about their experience. So, thank you. A round of applause, please, for everyone.